we're going to have a bunch of offices, including the mayoral contest, on the ballot this year. And one of the local offices that is going to be on the ballot is a very important one because this office has a lot of power. There are 5 members of the LA County Board of Supervisors. And as it stands right now, there is a 3-2 breakdown on issues such as supporting fake doctor Barbara Ferrer as the public health director for the county.
No, thank you.
You have 3 members of the board who are solidly team fake doctor, where you have Hilda Solis, you have Holly Mitchell, quite frankly.
Where are you, Holly?
Quite frankly.
And then you have Louie Anderson, a.k.a. Sheila Kuehl. Sheila is not running for re-election. She has one more term of eligibility left, and she announced that she will not be seeking a third and final term. So that seat is open. Who wins that race may have the power to keep or dump the fake doctor, Barbara Ferrer. That's how important this contest is on that single issue alone.
Yeah.
Now, the Board of Supervisors has power over the hospitals, the jails, social services, very important functions of government. But getting rid of the fake doctor is probably the biggest decision that they could make to improve your lives, because so much of the damaging policies come from the fake doctor's office. Whether it was the mask mandate, the vaccine card requirement, whatever, the eviction moratorium.
How about shutting down outdoor dining, Sheila?
That's right. All of that comes from that office. So if there's a third vote to dump the fake doctor, then we're free at last. Joining us is a candidate who is running to replace Sheila Kuehl on the LA County Board of Supervisors. And this district involves the San Fernando Valley, the West Side, parts of coastal Los Angeles. And she is kind enough to join us today to talk about her efforts to make it on the Board of Supervisors. Roxanne Hoge, is that correct?
It is. It's Roxanne Beckford Hoge on the ballot. And thank you so much for having me. You guys do an amazing job.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. And you can get Roxanne on the internet at superroxanne.com. So, Roxanne, let's start with the most important question first. If you're elected to the LA County Board of Supervisors, will you vote to dump fake Dr. Barbara Ferrer?
Absolutely. But more important than that, I would have voted to just ask her questions. I mean, we have these 5 women who have dominion over 10 million people that I refer to as the ladies of the view. Really, Catherine Barger is the only one who's sort of out there even asking questions.
And do you believe, because when you have 5 votes, you need to get to 3 to get anything done. Do you believe that you would be able to persuade your colleagues? Because, you know, as you mentioned, there's one sane voice on that board, and sometimes Janice Hahn tries to do the right thing, but not always. If you were to be elected to that board, you would have to get 2 of the 5 to vote with you to get anything done. Do you believe that you'd be able to do that?
Absolutely. Well, as you said, Catherine Barger is sane. And then Janice, I think, means well, wants to be liked. And the sea change that this would be indicative of if I were to beat the status quo to get onto the Board of Supervisors would, I think, show everyone where their bread is buttered. And I think it would be pretty easy to get to 3.
One of the really damaging things the Board of Supervisors has done in recent years is they've voted to defund the police and go to war with the sheriff. The sheriff, of course, does not work for the Board of Supervisors. The sheriff is duly elected in Alex Villanueva, and he's one of the few voices of sanity in local government here in Southern California. And as I said before, they voted to cut his budget. And they also voted to shut down Men's Central Jail in downtown Los Angeles and not replace it with anything. They did the same thing with some of the juvenile halls. So if you have a sheriff who's aggressively fighting crime and arresting people, it almost doesn't matter if you have no place to put them. If elected to the LA County Board of Supervisors, would you be one of the voices pushing back on the defunding of the police and the shutting down of the jails?
Again, absolutely. I'm from a third world country. I understand what happens when mob rule takes over, and that's where they're trying to get us here in LA. It's insane. LA has a sheriff that's willing to enforce the law while we have a DA that's not. He's our last stand, our bulwark against complete insanity. And the fact that they are freezing his budget, defaming him, as he says, defanging him, and wanting to not incarcerate anyone. One of the questionnaires I had to answer when you're running, you get these questionnaires from people. And they said, what would you do about the problem of over-incarceration? What are alternatives to incarceration? And I said, well, the first one is don't do the crime.
What about homelessness? We have voted to tax ourselves any number of times to allocate money to fight the homeless crisis. And the more we tax ourselves and the more we spend, including Measure Triple H, the worse the problem gets. Yet it seems like in local government, they double and triple down on the argument that we have a lot of homeless people in California because the cost of housing is too high. And if we just spend more money on low-income housing, you'll get rid of the homeless problem. Well, I think we now have the evidence that proves that that's not true. People are homeless because they're mentally ill, they're addicted to something, and some of them just want to live on the streets. They enjoy being feral. They don't want to have to follow the rules like everyone else does. They don't want to have to pay the mortgage and pay their taxes and that sort of thing. If elected to the Board of Supervisors, would you move the board to get away from the housing answer as the problem for homelessness?
Housing First has been an unmitigated disaster everywhere it's been tried, and LA is proof positive of that. It's been a great program for an enormous money transfer, about $6.5 billion in 10 years, into the pockets of people like Lhasa, and they've certainly bought a lot of nice tents. I see lots of tents in LA, but this is not a housing issue. As you say, but even mental illness is not the main issue. It's these poor, broken souls self-medicating and addicted to drugs and incapable of living in an apartment or a home. They're choosing not to because they're completely broken. It's sad and, quite frankly, very, very evil to let them stay on the streets. And by the way, the sheriff can help fix that problem.
We're speaking with Roxanne Hoge, who's a candidate for supervisor in Los Angeles County, District 3. That's the district that's currently being represented by Sheila Kuehl. You can get her online at superroxanne.com. Roxanne, if elected, you'll be working with the district attorney, George Gascon. You wouldn't have the power to appoint him. Like the sheriff, the district attorney is elected. There's currently an effort to recall him from office for refusing to prosecute crime, blaming victims, refusing to meet with victims, and essentially getting rid of public safety in Los Angeles County. Would you support the recall of George Gascon?
Would I? I have been. Actually, I'm working closely with Dennis Zine, the former councilman. I have recall petitions with me at all times in my car, and the fact is that everyone finally gets it. This is not the way to have a civilized society, and it's not the way to run the biggest, most populous county in the United States. So absolutely, Gascon needs to be recalled. Public safety is actually edges out even the fake doctor. In my regard, you can't have anything resembling a good life if you are finding people breaking into your home or following you home, or just taking as they will and murdering and hurting people. That doesn't work.
Do you think that the effort will be successful to recall him from office?
I think so. They have until almost July, remember, and when they collect signatures, it is sort of exponential. One of the problems is people collect, get really excited, and then forget to turn in. So if anybody out there is listening and you have a stack of signatures or even two, be sure to turn them in. I've never seen people so motivated. And Board of Supervisors, by the way, is a totally nonpartisan race because there's no partisan way, as you always say, to fill a pothole. But everywhere you go, if you just say the word recall, people are falling over themselves to sign this, and they're very motivated from all ends of the political spectrum. It turns out that your personal safety is kind of a big deal.
Why did you decide to run for supervisor, and why now?
So I actually ran for office once before in 2018 because my assemblyman was running unopposed and I thought that was un-American. I became an American citizen in 2000 and it's kind of a big deal to me, that whole subject versus citizen thing. And I learned pretty quickly from that episode that it's not a good idea to run against an incumbent and not a good idea to run when you have minor children at home. So my husband and I were like, that's never again going to happen. And then for the past 2 years, we've watched our lives be strangled and hurt in every way by the Board of Supervisors' elevation of Barbara Ferrer. So I'm a working actor. I can't work anymore because of the SAG mandate. My kids are in school and in college in LA County. They had 2 years of their educational, emotional, and social development ripped away from them. And our business was it's non-essential and it was doomed. So it's personal. And I'd like to, be the voice of all the mama bears and papa bears who are just not going to take it anymore.
This cycle is relatively atypical for county elections. Because of the pandemic, the county has had the power of God over all of us, whether or not our businesses could be open, as you talked about, whether or not the kids could go to school, that sort of thing. So a lot of people are focused on the fake doctor, the Department of Public Health, and all the decisions that were made from that office, thanks to the power that was granted upon her by the Board of Supervisors. However, when you typically talk about county elections, the two groups of people who are most interested in making sure their candidate wins are the developers, because the county has a lot of control over land use issues and tax dollars, and the unions. The sheriff's deputies union, the district attorney's deputies union, all the unions that do business with the county, that work for the county, they have a dog in the fight, and they want to get their candidate through and into the runoff and ultimately into office. And those two groups, the developers and the unions, are the ones that pony up most of the money that these candidates rely on. As an outsider, how is it that you intend to compete with these other candidates? And you have other candidates that have been elected to office for many years, and they're going to get substantial amounts of money from the unions and from the developers. What's your plan of attack on defeating them, given the fact that they'll have every imaginable advantage?
Well, they have every imaginable advantage except one, and that is the consent of the governed. Because the people who really rallied around me and begged me to run were Democrat, dyed-in-the-wool liberal moms, members of Team Reality. So many people saw what the Board of Supervisors does, as you said, during the pandemic, and they're not willing to take it anymore. So that's one. Number two item is, the developers and the unions are big money. But they're not backing one horse. They're 3 establishment, 800-pound gorilla career politicians in this race, and they're splitting that vote. It hasn't been decided in a smoke-filled room who's the one who's going to win. So there's a schism there. And as we know, we have the crazy top 2 system, and so there's math involved. There's 6 names on the ballot. I'm the only mother. I'm the super mom for supervisor. And the fact is that I'm willing to use their bloated budgets against them. I can say exactly what I think, and it's exactly what the electorate is thinking. We deserve a clean, a safe, and a sane LA, and they're not even able to say that.
Roxanne Hoge, candidate for LA County Board of Supervisors, District 3. You can get her online at superroxanne.com and follow her on Twitter at Roxanne Hoge. Roxanne, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you, guys. And I love all your mask stories. I used to wear my snorkel everywhere. I'm glad it's over.